Hey, welcome back. This is Mike. In today's video, we're going to work on the AddPost page. So last time we finished up the responsive mobile menu. Today, we're going to be able to add posts to a Firestore database. And we'll be using, so far we've been routing any clicks to the About page, and now we want to route them to the AddPost page. So let's go ahead and get the page started. I'll do the normal import React from React, and we'll export a new page called AddPost. And again, it'll be an arrow function. And we want to do a return inside here. And the return will house our JSX for the page. All right, so what I'm imagining here is we'll have some sort of page wrapper that's a div to give it some margin and center it. We'll do a form. So let's do a form here. And then inside the form, we'll have an input, which is going to be the title. And then we'll have, I'm going to use a div instead of a text area. So normally you'd probably use a text area for this. But what I want is it to grow as you type in, and it's just easier for me to do that with a div than with a text area. So what we'll do here is on the input, let's add some information like the ID is going to be title, the type will be text, the name is going to be title. Our placeholder is going to be title again. And then we'll have, for that should be good for now, and we'll add some on our change handlers and whatnot in a little bit. So then let's go ahead and make our body, so the content, and I'll add a label here so we know where it starts. So we'll do label, and this will be for the body. And notice we have to use the HTML for here. We can't just do a normal like a normal for that we would do in HTML. Since it's JSX, we have to use an HTML for instead. And for here, we'll just type content. And then from after that, we have our div, and let's give it a class name of, this will be our text area element. So it's going to act as a text area, but it's going to be a div. The ID will equal body. And let's see, we want content editable to be true. And we want, that should be good for now. So let's see, what else do we need? Let's go ahead and add this to our header. So when we click add post here, we want it to go to the add post page. So let me add post. And then we also need to add it to our app itself. So here in the app, we have an about route, but we need to add a new route. Whenever somebody routes to add post, we want to bring up the component add post. And we also need to import that component. So here, let's change this to add post. Same thing here. All right, and we're compiled, so let's take a look at it. All right, over on our web app, we're on the home screen, so whenever I click Add Post, you can see it takes me to another page, and it has an input here that I can type in, new title. And you see our placeholder goes away, and now it has text in it. we have a content, and then somewhere over here, right there, we have an editable div. So we can say, this is the body. All right, so next thing we want to do is we want to add, let's say, a button to submit, and we want to add some class, some styling to make this look a little better, and finally some change handlers. So on change and on input, we'll modify this and send it to our database store. All right, back here in AddPost, I'm just going to do a normal button for now, and I think default is blue, and that's fine. So a new button, and it will have a submit message here. And I also want to add a type of submit here as well. And since I haven't imported a button yet, I need to go ahead and import the button component. So that's up here in our commons. We need to import from common button, and then this should autofill in for us button. All right, the next thing is to add some style here just to make it look a little better. So again, I want to center the contents. I want to stack them. So I'll probably use a flex there on the form itself. And there's a lot of different ways I can do this. What I'll probably do is just say here it will be my add post wrapper. How about that? And then here I'll do the same thing. I haven't made it yet, but I'll go ahead and put it in here. And then add post wrapper. And we'll have to get that out of, let's see, it will be maybe one back. Yep, style. And then we'll have an add post style. So let's add that style component here, the styled component. So new file, and I will do an add post style.js. And so in here, let's go ahead and just copy the start of our nav. So we'll go ahead and bring in all of this. And instead of making a nav, I want to make a div. And again, we're doing an add post style component here. All right, so inside this style div, I want a max width. And let's make it maybe 680 pixels. And then a margin. Let's center it, so 0 auto, we'll center that, and then have the width 100% when it gets down and smaller. So that should work out okay. And then within this, we'll have a form. So just a form like this. And we'll make that form display flex, and we want to stack it, so we'll do the flex direction as column. And I'll give it a margin on the top of, let's say, 32 pixels. Inside the form, we'll have an input. That's our title input. And so here, maybe we can give it a margin on the bottom. Let's space it out 16 pixels. We'll turn off the border. I like having it borderless. Make it a little wider, so change the line height to 1.5. The font size, I want it kind of bold since it's the title. Or not bold, but kind of big. And then also bold. So font weight will be, how about 600? And then we'll have that div that's acting as our text element. So we'll have a text area element. And the min height here will be 32 pixels, so I don't want it to go below that, and then the border will also be none, and the overflow X can be hidden, and overflow Y should be auto. And finally, also have a margin on the bottom of 16 pixels, and then that will be the button. And the button's already styled from other things. All right, and finally, I named this wrong. Let's actually make this the wrapper that I named it earlier. So AddPost wrapper. Breakpoints is never used, but we might use that. We'll have to look at what it looks like in mobile and think about what we can add if we need those breakpoints. Otherwise, I can delete them later. All right, so here you can see our changes. They're no longer bunched up together. Here we have the title, and we can change that. New post looks good. The content and the div is down here, so underneath the content, and it's a little hidden. So what I might want to do there, we'll see, maybe adding that later, is somehow make it autofocus. So let's see, if I tab, it goes straight there, but maybe I'm thinking like an add symbol of some sort, and then you can choose to add a text or an image or something else. Right now we'll just do text just to get this thing working, but you should be able to type in here as well. Very good. And then submit, I'll probably capitalize maybe either the whole thing or at least the S. But right now you can see the submit is reloading our page, and I don't want that at all. So what I'll do is we'll do some handlers. So whenever I type in, I want that to be handled on change, and then whenever I add input to the HTML, inner HTML here, I want that to also kick off a handler. And then finally submit needs to send it to our database. All right, so let's make a couple changes. I want this to be a capital S here. I want to add some event handlers in here. So I need maybe a handle submit. So const handle submit. And I will pass in event. So I'll just do EVT is what I'm used to. And so EVT.prevent default. And so that'll keep our page from reloading because we'll just handle it with React and not worry about reloading the entire page. What we'll end up probably doing is on submit, we'll send it to Firebase, and then I'll redirect to another page, like where we list all the posts that exist so that we can see it as an admin. I also want to add a handle for change. So whenever our input changes, I want to be able to handle that. And we can start with passing EVT in here as well. And then the other thing is on a div, whenever that editable div gets edited, it's not an onChange event. It's actually an input. So we'll do handle input. And ideally what we might want to do here is maybe wrap it in another component, or we'll probably end up breaking all this up. I want to put it on the same component today just to keep it simple so that we can get everything working, and then maybe we'll break it up later, eventually using maybe use reducer instead of just handling everything inside of here. But for now I'm going to keep everything on the same page and keep everything separate, and then we'll do things as needed in the future. All right, so EVT, we'll pass in EVT here as well. And then I need to add these to our elements. So we have on form, we're going to have an on submit. We want to call our handle submit function. So this guy. And then on input, we want to do on change. So we'll handle change. And then on our div, we want to add an on input. And we'll do a handle input call right there. All right, and so now inside of these functions, what we can do is on change, we want to add some state for now. It'll be in our state where we keep the post information. So we need to, on change, take the title and shove it into our post state. And then on input, we need to take the body, the inner HTML, and shove it into our state. So what I want is an object here. So I'll do a new const, and so this will be, how about a new post, and set new post. So remember on change we have the variable for the object or number or text or whatever it is here, and then we have the set function so we can actually change it because we can't change this directly. We have to use the set setter to actually change the state value. All right, and so then we'll add use state, and I will give it some just blank default values. So title can be an empty string, and body can also be an empty string. All right, and I need to import use state in order to use it. So use state up here. All right, so next down here on handle submit, we've already have the evt.prevent default, but I want to store post in Firestore. We'll handle that later. That's just a reminder for me to take care of that. And then here on handle change, I want to, so this EVT has a reference to the target, which is the input here. And so instead of passing an EVT, I could just call it target and wrap it in curly braces. And so now it's ready for me to just use directly in this handle change. So that's the same as doing evt.target. I just don't have to type as much whenever I start doing it. So then I'll break that apart. I'll destructure it, use it, and so we'll have a name and value are both stored in target. And then what I need to do is I need to call set new post. And we're going to alter the function based on what is passed in. And so what I'll do is we can use the spread operator here and spread and say new post, so whatever's in new post. And then we need to change the value of whatever the name is. So here we have on our input, the name is title, so that's what we're editing, so name of title. And then we want to put in the value, so whatever was typed in. And so this is a handler that can be used on more than one input. So if we did, right now we just have one input, which is the title. But if we did have multiple, we could use this over and over again since it's not directly tied to any single input. So it makes it kind of nice to handle it that way. This other one with the div, since we do have to use handle input or the on input event instead of on change event, we basically need the same thing down here, but slightly different values. So instead of name, we're going to use ID, and instead of value, we're going to use inner HTML. And so we'll destructure the EVT similarly by using the target instead. And then here we'll copy this line, but change name to ID and value to inner HTML, all caps. And then after that, what we can do is we can pull this down right here, set new post. We want to do the same thing here, but instead of name, we'll do ID, and instead of value, we'll do inner HTML. All right, so the final thing, or a couple more things we need to do here is one, we need to place the value back in to our input. So the value is going to be connected to our new post.title. And then the for the body down here, we want to say HTML is equal to, and maybe I can expand this vertically so we can see each one here, just like we did the input. Very good. And so the HTML here will be new post dot, let's see, this will be body, right? Because that's what I'm storing it in. The ID is body, so this will be body. All right, here we are at firebase.google.com, and I can go to my console, and you can see my other projects. I'm going to go ahead and add a project for today. So let's start with a name. So let's name this, I'll just name it me. And continue. Enable analytics, sure. Choose or create a Google Analytics account. Go with the default. Create project, and this will take a little time. All right, so now we have a new project going, and I want a Cloud Firestore. So let's create a database, and I will start in production mode. So I'll just do, or no, I'll start in test mode. And so I get 30 days where any reads or writes can come from anywhere. And then once we get authentication going, then I'll put it in production mode and make sure that only authenticated users can read and write to it. All right, choose a location. Default should be fine. All right, so here we have our empty database. So I'm going to go ahead and start a collection. So we want to add our posts here. So I'm going to have a posts collection. And then we'll have a test one post, and this will have a title that will be new post. We'll have a body, and I'll just do something like this, HTML text, and then a created, and this will be a timestamp. And I will put in the date and save. And there we go. So we have our first entry into our collection. So you can see we can add more and more documents to posts and have an ability to search it and add to it and modify as needed. All right, so that's all it is to our Firebase. All right, so now that we have the Firestore up and going, I need to add an app to Firebase, this project, in order to get the authentication strings. So let me go to Project Overview, and it'll be a web app. And so nickname, just be the same thing. And we'll go ahead and do this and register app, because we will be hosting it eventually. All right, so next, and then deploy after we log in, fine. All right, and so one thing I really need is this right here. So I'm gonna grab this and copy this as well, because we'll need to make a file that contains this information. All right, so now that we have the Firestore database, I need to connect our project to our Firebase project. So I need to add a new file, and it'll be firebase.js, and this is where we're going to paste that code we copied from the database earlier, the online Firebase database. All right, so now that we have our firebase.js file, we need to paste in that code. So here we're importing Firebase from Firebase app, import Firebase Firestore, and then we're building a Firebase config. And from here, I need to add Firebase and initialize the app. and I'm going to pass in the Firebase config here. And now I also want to export Firestore so we can use it on our AddPost page. So Firebase.Firestore. All right, so now we can just use Firestore, import that into our add page, and access our Firestore database. There's one more thing we need to do. I need to add a new add Firebase to our project. So I'm going to do a yarn add Firebase. All right, and now our final step to connect our app to our database is just to write the data in. Today, we'll just be able to write into our database. Next time, we'll work on getting our posts back out of it and putting it to the screen. So to write into it, we're going to do Firestore, and we need to import that, and it did it automatically. It's awesome. So up here, it automatically added an import Firestore from Firebase. And then here we need to name the collection we want to add our document to, because it's made up of collections, and then collections are made up of documents. And so we called it posts. And we can do two things. We can add, and when we add, it's going to automatically come up with an ID for us. We could also do set. And so if we knew the ID, we could say set in order to write into that document ID. But I'm just going to do add, and we want to add the title. We want to add the body. And for now, we want to add just the created date. All right. So the title will be new post title, and the body will be new post body. We could probably make this a little more efficient if we had this just title and body. If we destructured it, we might save that for a later date when we maybe save this into another, maybe a hook or something. We'll edit this a little bit. And then finally, for created, I just want a new date in there. In the future, we'll do modified once we make our posts editable, but for now, we'll just work on the add. All right, so here we're back on the web app. Let's go ahead and test it out. So let's say a new title is how to build a web app with React. All right, and let's submit. And right now it's not doing anything when I submit visibly, but let's take a look at the database and see what happened. All right, so here in the database, we had our test post that I put in earlier, but now if I look at this new document, I have the body, we can do it. I have the title, how to build a web app with React, and then the created on date right there. All right, thanks for joining me today. We were able to add the AddPost page. We can now set the title and set some sort of text body content in here. We can submit it to Firebase and store it off. Next time what we'll do is we'll pull all the posts in the database and list them out in a table and be able to edit them, delete them, add new ones, that kind of thing.